I'm Amelia Grant, 28 years old. For 2 decades, my parents branded me the slow child, while my sister collected fancy diplomas and the golden ticket to our inheritance. They poked fun at my dyslexia over dinner and locked me out of every major family decision. I was the daughter designed to fail. But on the night of my sister's massive graduation gala in New York, right in front of hundreds of elites, a stranger handed me an envelope. That single piece of paper exposed every lie my parents had built their lives on. They had no idea my grandmother had been watching the whole time. The secret she left behind was a bomb waiting to blow our family empire to pieces. I'm Amelia Grant, and for most of my life, people didn't waste much breath introducing me. And this is the younger one, my mother would say at charity balls. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were already scanning the room for someone more important. Then her tone would shift completely. And this is Victoria Grant, Columbia Law. That was the whole pitch. Victoria didn't need a backstory. She owned every room she walked into. Professors raved about her focus. Investors hung on her every word. My parents talked about her future like it was a prophecy, a done deal. I was just the empty space between her wins. I got my dyslexia diagnosis at 7. Letters danced around the page. When I tried to read fast, the words scrambled, turning easy sentences into exhausting riddles. Teachers preached patience. Specialists threw around terms like alternative learning. My parents went with a lazier theory: some kids just aren't smart. We lived on the Upper West Side overlooking Central Park, the kind of zip code that screams old money. My father, Charles Grant, was the CEO of Grant Holdings, a real estate giant my grandmother built from scratch. You'd see our name on luxury high-rises, hospital wings, and massive city projects. Dinner talk was strictly business mergers, stocks, and reputation. They dissected Victoria's internships like they were analyzing the stock market. Her success wasn't hoped for. It was required. I was just background noise. Acknowledged but never really heard. When I turned 12, they dropped a fortune on tutors for Victoria. Debate coaches, language experts, consultants, costing more per hour than most people make in a week. When I asked for help with my reading speed, Mom gave a soft, pitying sigh. "We've tried everything, Amelia," she said. "Not everyone is cut out for academics." I believed her because it hurt less than fighting back. So I learned to cope in silence. I swapped textbooks for audiobooks. Instead of taking notes, I drew diagrams. While the other kids memorized text, I mapped out concepts: arrows, linking cause and effect, shapes turning chaos into systems. It made sense to me. The only person who noticed was Grandma Eleanor. She lived downtown in a pre-war apartment, facing the Hudson. I went over every Sunday. She never rushed me when I stumbled over words. Instead, she turned legal contracts into stories. "You don't read slowly," she told me once, sliding old blueprints across the table. "You read structure." I didn't get it back then. I just knew her apartment was the only place where the silence didn't feel judgmental. Family holidays were a different story. One Christmas, the whole clan gathered under the chandeliers to compare achievements. Dad raised a glass. Victoria got into Columbia Law. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. My aunt teared up. Then Dad looked at me. And Amelia. He paused, looking for a nice way to say loser. Is still finding her path. The room filled with that polite, awkward laughter. I just stared at my dinner. Under the table, Grandma Eleanor grabbed my hand. Her grip was iron. When I looked up, she wasn't looking at me with pity. She was glaring at them with pure rage. 3 months later, she called me over. The room was bright with sun, as she handed me a brass-hinged wooden box. "Keep this hidden," she ordered. "What is it, amulet against the day they show their true colors?" I laughed, thinking she was just being theatrical. Families have favorites. It happens. I didn't think it was malicious. I shoved the box in my closet and forgot it existed. Years rolled by. I graduated from a state school, definitely not the Ivy League. I eventually took a job at Grant Holdings as an admin assistant. Starting pay $46,000. That same month, Victoria started as junior legal counsel. Her signing bonus was bigger than my entire annual salary. I spent my days booking rooms, filing papers, and making coffee for executives who didn't know I existed. I sat close enough to hear deals worth millions, but I was so invisible they assumed I was deaf too. That's when I started seeing the cracks, patterns in the negotiations, investors getting nervous about specific risks, deals that looked shiny on the outside but were rotten at the core. At lunch, I drew diagrams of it all. I connected people to projects, mapping out a web that no spreadsheet could show. It became my secret hobby, proof that maybe I wasn't broken. Late one night, looking out at the skyline, a thought hit me. What if the story my family told about me was a lie? Once that question took root, I couldn't shake it. Sometimes one crack in the narrative is all it takes to bring the whole wall down. Working at Grant Holdings taught me how invisibility works. It's not loud. It's not a fight. It's a slow erase. It's the little things, omissions. Meetings you're left out of, conversations that die when you walk up. Decisions made like you aren't even there. My desk was just outside the executive wing, stuck between the power players and the nobodies. Every morning, I prepped binders for meetings I wasn't allowed to enter. I printed contracts worth tens of millions, aligned the slide decks, and set up calls for investors whose names were on the cover of Forbes. They never lowered their voices around me. They figured I wouldn't understand the jargon. At first, I believed them. But after a while, I couldn't help but listen. The patterns were screaming at me. I saw which investors got cold feet, which projects were rushed just to boost stock prices, and which bosses smiled in public but stabbed each other in the back. Reading the reports was still a slog, but when I turned their talk into diagrams, the truth clicked. I carried a notebook everywhere. Arrows linking shell companies, circles around bad partnerships, timelines, showing exactly where the bodies were buried. One afternoon, a junior analyst named Kevin stood by my desk waiting for the elevator. "What's that?" he asked, nodding at my notebook. I tried to close it. "Just organizing schedules." But he'd seen it. "Honestly," he said, looking surprised, "that explains the Harbor District mess better than the official summary." Before I could answer, the elevator dinged and he was gone. It was a 5-second interaction, but it stuck with me. Back home, nothing changed. Dinner was still the Victoria show. Dad described her time in court like she was winning wars. "She gets strategy," he bragged one night. "You can't teach that kind of instinct." Mom nodded. "Clients trust her instantly." I passed the bread basket, waiting for them to stop gushing. They didn't. 2 weeks later, I saw Victoria's name popping up on high-level schedules, strategy reviews, investment planning, succession talks. I knew because I was the one booking the conference rooms. Late one night, digging through archived files, I found a photo tucked in a folder. It was Grandma in the 70s, standing on a construction site. Sleeves rolled up, laughing boots, covered in mud. She looked nothing like the stiff portraits in the lobby. On the back, in faded ink, "Built, not inherited." "You found her favorite one." I spun around. It was Maria Alvarez. She was a senior assistant who'd been with Grandma for decades. "She hated boardrooms," Maria whispered. "She liked the dirt." "She never talked about the early days," I said. "She didn't have to," Maria replied. Then she softened. "She talked about you, though." I blinked. "Me, all the time." Maria smiled. She said, "You see what everyone else misses." Maria walked away, leaving me with a warm feeling I wasn't used to. Spring came, and the machines started turning for Victoria's graduation party. They rented a ballroom at a midtown luxury hotel. Mom micromanaged every second of it. The guest list was stacked: judges, politicians, big money donors. They treated the flowers like life or death decisions. This wasn't a party. It was a coronation. Victoria wasn't just graduating. She was arriving. It was supposed to be her coronation. The grand unveiling of the future of Grant Holdings. Then, 7 days before the gala, a notification pinged in my inbox. Subject line: confidential organizational restructuring. I clicked it open with a shrug, then froze, reading the words until they blurred. My role was being deleted. Termination date July 1st. They threw in a severance check to sweeten the blow. The office buzz vanished into a ringing silence. Through the thin drywall behind me, my father's voice drifted in from his executive suite, muffled but unmistakable. "We have to move her out before Victoria takes the stage," he said. My mother's reply was soft. "People will talk, Charles." A heavy silence followed. "She just isn't built to lead." I sat rigid in my chair. No shock, just a cold, hard certainty settling in. The graduation gala was 24 hours away. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't going as a daughter. I was attending as a ghost. Sometimes, they don't shove you out the door. They just construct a tomorrow where you don't fit and wait for you to get the hint. But there is a specific power in that moment. You realize you've been edited out of the script. That's when you decide to grab the pen and write your own ending. The Regency Grand Ballroom was pure theater, exactly how my mother liked it. Flawless, offensively expensive, and beyond criticism. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto white marble. A jazz trio smoothed over the silence, while waiters glided like phantoms balancing silver trays of champagne. It screamed success. It screamed Victoria. I lingered by the doors, nervously flattening my black dress. It was a simple piece, the best my salary allowed, but amidst the sea of bespoke tuxedos and couture gowns, I looked like the help. The room swelled with guests. Investors pumped my father's hand. Lawyers toasted. My mother. The chatter merged into a drone of worship. I was invisible. Amelia. My mother materialized, smile painted on eyes, scanning for defects. "You actually showed up," she said, feigning mild surprise. "Obviously." She dissected my appearance, dress shoes, hair in one sweep. "Right," she said, fiddling with a diamond bracelet. "We put you at table 26. In the back. We need tonight to remain focused." Focused. I nodded, though the implication landed like a slap. She leaned in, voice dropping. "This is Victoria's night. Try to blend in." I watched her melt back into the elite crowd before trudging to my exile behind a pillar that effectively blocked the stage. I was a spectator at my own funeral. At 8:30, the house lights died. My father took the podium, radiating authority, soaking up the applause before he even opened his mouth. Tonight he boomed, hoisting a flute, "We honor greatness." The room went dead silent. "Victoria Grant has graduated top of her class at Columbia Law. She has already been scouted by one of the most prestigious firms in New York." The room erupted. Victoria walked out, glowing in emerald silk, born for the spotlight. "She is the future," my father declared. "Not just of this family, but of Grant Holdings." More cheering. I clapped like a robot detached from my own hands. Then came the bomb. Effective immediately, my father announced, holding the pause for maximum drama. Victoria will begin her transition into executive leadership. She is the heir to everything we have built. Standing ovation. Flashbulbs popped. The elite smiled their approval. From the shadows of table 26, I watched my career evaporate. A woman next to me, a second cousin I barely knew, leaned in. "So where does that leave you?" she whispered. I opened my mouth, but the email, the overheard whispers, the calculated exclusion, it all choked me. I wasn't part of the dynasty. The applause tapered off. As the guests sat, I spotted a figure near the doors, an older gentleman in a slate gray suit. He wasn't celebrating. He was observing. His eyes swept the room until they locked on me. A cold shiver ran down my spine. He started walking, deliberate, unhurried steps. The ballroom noise seemed to dampen as he arrived. "Miss Grant." His voice was low. "Yes. I'm Daniel Reeves," he said, sliding a business card across the linen. "I was your grandmother's attorney." The introduction threw me off. Balance. "She died 3 years ago," I stammered. "I know," he replied softly. "She left an item in my custody with strict orders." From his breast pocket, he withdrew a cream envelope sealed with red wax. "I was instructed to hand this to you," he said, "the moment your father named a successor." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What is it?" He extended the letter. "The paperwork your father doesn't know exists." It felt heavier than paper had any right to be. Around us, the party roared back to life. Glasses clinked. Victoria beamed for the cameras. Daniel Reeves leaned in closer. Your grandmother believed you would know what to do. I stared at my name in her familiar script. My lungs seized. The night wasn't over. It had just begun. I didn't even feel myself stand up. 1 second, the room was cheering. The next, I was power walking toward the service exit, gripping the envelope like a weapon. Behind me, the laughter swelled as the band kicked back in. Victoria's voice drifted over the speakers, gracious and triumphant. They were celebrating a reality I was about to shatter. The service corridor was stark, bathed in the hum of fluorescent tubes that replaced the warm chandelier glow. The party noise faded to a dull throb. I leaned against a stainless steel prep table. My name stared back at me. I hesitated. Breaking that seal felt permanent, like crossing a bridge that would burn behind me. I cracked the wax. 3 items fell out: a letter, a legal file, and a small envelope marked times. Read after asterisk. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. Asterisk. My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, your father, asterisk. Asterisk has finally played his hand. I couldn't protect you in life, so I prepared a shield for you now. You were never slow, child. You just see the structure of things, asterisk. Asterisk differently, and people fear what they can't control. This is my final will executed September 2019. It voids everything prior. Read it, then decide who you want to be. Love, Grandma Eleanor. Asterisk. My throat constricted. I grabbed the legal document. It was dense walls of text that usually made my brain swim. I forced myself to focus, 1 line at a time. The meaning coalesced. Then a sentence stopped my heart. I read it twice. Asterisk. To my granddaughter, Amelia Rose Grant, I bequeath 51% of my shares in Grant asterisk. Asterisk. Holdings, along with all associated voting rights. Asterisk. The floor tilted. 51%. Majority control. My father wasn't just passing the torch to Victoria. He was giving away a company he didn't legally own. My breath came in short gasps. I read on. Asterisk. This decision is made with full knowledge of my son, Charles Grant's bias against Amelia. She has been sidelined not for lack of talent, but asterisk. Asterisk. Lack of opportunity. Asterisk. A sob caught in my chest. She knew. All those dinners, the dismissals, I thought I was crazy. Near the bottom bold text jumped out. Asterisk. Activation requires asterisk. Asterisk. The beneficiary. To call an emergency board meeting within 72 hours of receipt. Asterisk. 72 hours. I checked my phone. 9:02 p.m. The clock was already ticking. I tore open the small envelope. A handwritten note inside. Asterisk. You will hesitate, times it read. Asterisk. That is why I set a deadline. Courage requires urgency. Asterisk. I slumped against the cold wall, clutching the papers to my chest. Through the double doors, applause erupted again. My father was still talking, celebrating a future he thought was set in stone. It wasn't. Not anymore. This wasn't just revenge. It was a takeover. If I moved, everything changed. Headlines, court battles, a family fractured forever. If I stayed quiet, I'd lose my job and vanish. Victoria would inherit the kingdom. My father's narrative would remain perfect, safe and unchallenged. For 28 years, I waited for permission to exist. Now, permission was in my hands. I looked at Grandma's signature one last time. Fear, mixed with something electric. Possibility. The moments that define you aren't always loud. Sometimes, it's just you, standing in a hallway, realizing the path they paved for you isn't the only road out. I walked out of the hotel without a word. Outside, the Manhattan air bit at my skin. Traffic flowed down Park Avenue. Car headlights slashed through the drizzle on the blacktop. Strangers brushed past me, lost in chatter about their Friday nights, completely oblivious to the bomb I was hiding under my trench coat. I used to treat leaving family parties like a prison break, ducking out early to avoid the snide comparisons and the prying questions. But tonight was different. I wasn't running away. I was on a mission. By the time I got back to my place, the city was dead quiet. My roommates were knocked out, leaving the living room bathed in the amber glow of the street lamps outside. I laid the paperwork on the coffee table like a weapon. I just stood there staring at it. 51%. The number didn't even look real. Suddenly, my pocket vibrated. An email from HR popped up on the screen. Transition protocol confirmation. I clicked it open. My time at Grant Holdings had an expiration date 6 weeks. Standard severance package. A polite thanks for nothing. The timing was brutal. The upcoming gala wasn't a party. It was a coronation for my replacement. I snapped the laptop shut and headed for the bedroom closet. The old wooden chest was exactly where I'd stashed it, buried behind winter gear and plastic bins. I wiped a thick layer of dust off the lid. Grandma's voice played in my head. Eventually, people show you exactly who they are. The brass hinges groaned as I lifted the top. 3 things sat inside a letter: a yellowing contract dated 1974, and a modern USB drive that looked completely out of place. I unfolded the note first. Amelia, if you're reading this, the day I feared has come early. I built this company on grit, not privilege. Real leaders serve the people who rely on them. They don't just enjoy the perks. This document is the original charter. It ensures the majority stake can't be touched unless the board agrees. The drive holds the ammunition you might need. Use it for justice, not vengeance. Love, Eleanor. My heart hammered against my ribs. I jammed the drive into my laptop. Folders populated the screen instantly, minutes archived, emails, transcripts, but one audio file caught my eye: board meeting March 2018. I hit play, and my father's voice cut through the silence. She's lost her touch, he sneered. We need to strip her voting rights for the good of the firm. I heard protests, then a vote. He lost, but barely. I froze. It wasn't just about favoring Victoria. He had actively tried to stage a coup against his own mother while she was still breathing. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated hit. I slumped back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The years of cold shoulders and secrets finally added up. Grandma knew. That's why she gave me the box. She wasn't just leaving me money. She was arming me. I glanced at the clock, 11:58 p.m. The 72-hour clock was ticking. Doing nothing meant letting the plan succeed. Dad would stay king, and Victoria would be the heir apparent, no questions asked. I could just fade away quiet and easy. I picked up Daniel Reeves's business card. My thumb hovered over the dial button, but the old fear crept in. Don't cause a scene, it whispered. Don't make a fool of yourself. Stay in your lane. That voice usually kept me in line, but tonight a new voice pushed back. Staying quiet didn't save you. It just bought them time to bury you. I typed out a new email, Mr. Reeves. Let's pull the trigger. How do we convene the board? I hit send. No lightning struck. The world didn't end. Just a strange calm. But inside that silence, the dynamic flipped. I was done reacting to them. I was making the moves now. When you finally take the pen back and write your own chapters, the future feels wide open. Daniel called at 7:12 a.m. I picked up on the first ring, already fueled by coffee and adrenaline, surrounded by the files I'd memorized. Paperwork is drafted, he said. We need 3 board members to force an emergency session. We have one, and I just secured 2 more. I squeezed the phone. They signed without meeting me. They trusted Eleanor, he replied. In this game, legacy speaks louder than a pitch deck. An hour later, I strolled into the office like it was any other Tuesday. Same polished marble, same glass walls reflecting the Manhattan skyline. The timeline of success on the wall mocked me. Everything looked normal. Machines whirring, people chatting. Elevators chimed. But the stability was a lie. The fuse was already lit. I sat at my desk processing mundane calendar invites for executives who still looked at me like I was part of the furniture. At 10:41, the notification hit. Emergency motion filed. The text felt heavy in my hand. Around me, phones rang and keyboards clacked. Nobody knew the kingdom had just fallen. A laugh echoed from the break room. They were oblivious. "You look like a ghost," Maria Alvarez said, leaning over my partition. "Rough night," I lied. She narrowed her eyes. Eleanor used to get that look right before she dropped the hammer. She walked away before I could respond. By 1 p.m., the vibe shifted. Suits were walking faster. Office doors clicked shut. Nervous glances exchanged in the hall. Panic spreads through a corporation like a virus, silent but fast. At 1:58, my phone rang. "Amelia." Victoria's voice was ice cold. "What did you do?" "Excuse me, Dad just got served with a board meeting notice," she hissed. Margaret Langley and 2 others signed it. "I didn't know board members needed permission to meet," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Don't play dumb. Margaret has been dormant for a decade. Maybe she finally woke up," I suggested. Victoria snapped. "If you're trying to humiliate this family, it's working." Click. 20 minutes later, my father tore past my desk. He ignored me, but the rage radiating off him was palpable. His office door slammed so hard the drywall shook. Through the glass, I heard him yelling, "It's a nuisance. We'll squash it and move on. Margaret is senile." No, Amelia has nothing to do with it. She wouldn't understand the bylaws if she read them. I stared at my screen, smiling. Being invisible used to hurt. Now it was my superpower. The invite hit my inbox late that day, Saturday 10 a.m., Executive Suite. It was real. I wasn't just questioning the hierarchy anymore. I was coming to dismantle it. That night, my apartment looked like a war room. Flowcharts, wills, bylaws. The same pattern recognition that got me through college helped me decode the corporate speak. I saw the traps they'd set. Panic flared. What if they just laughed at me? What if I choked? I almost shoved it all back in the box. Then I realized arrogance isn't competence. They sounded sure, but that didn't make them right. The hardest part wasn't fighting them. It was believing I had the right to step into the ring. I zipped my bag. Tomorrow wasn't just about shares. It was about choosing to be the protagonist of my own life rather than an extra in theirs. When staying quiet hurts more than speaking up, you know you've crossed a line. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward while your legs shake. Saturday morning hit. Not Chicago, Manhattan. Usually chaotic, but the financial district was dead silent on a weekend. The Grant Holdings Tower loomed over me, the glass facade reflecting a woman I barely recognized. Same blazer, same cold hands. But today, I didn't take the side entrance. I walked through the main revolving doors. The lobby was cavernous, my heels clicking sharply on the stone. The guard looked up. Name Amelia Grant. He tapped his screen, hesitated, and then gestured to the gold elevators. Go ahead, ma'am. The doors slid shut, sealing my fate. 42 floors. The numbers ticked up like a countdown to impact. I'd booked 1,000 meetings on this floor, but never set foot on it. This was Olympus, where the gods made the rules. Deals worth fortunes were made here. Today, I walked that path solo. The corridor was massive, hushed with glass walls framing the New York skyline. Chatter died instantly as I walked by. First came the double takes, then the confusion. I halted at the boardroom where security blocked the path. Name, he grunted. Amelia Grant. He checked his clipboard and scowled. You're not on the list. Before I could argue, the sharp clack of stilettos echoed behind me. Naturally, she isn't. Victoria swept in perfectly, poised in a Navy power suit, looking exactly like the corporate shark she aspired to be. Her smile was purely for show. This is a closed session, she whispered harshly. I have a presentation. Her mask slipped. Amelia, stop. This is embarrassing. You're an admin assistant. My data is confidential. She looked unsure for a split second. Then my father rounded the corner, flanked by 2 VPs. The moment he spotted me, shock turned into annoyance. Why is she here? He demanded. Victoria smoothed it over. I was just removing her. Dad stopped short, hands clasped behind him, his signature disappointed boss stance. Amelia, he said, ice cold. Leave. Now. I opened my mouth, but the doors swung open. Actually, a steel voice cut in. Stay. Margaret Langley emerged, 70 years old and terrifyingly commanding. Silver hair, iron gaze. She's my guest, Margaret declared. She has the floor. Dad's jaw clenched. This violates protocol. So does bypassing the bylaws. Margaret shot back. Let her enter. The silence stretched. Finally, Dad stepped aside. Fine, he snapped. Let's get this over with. The room was smaller than expected. Just a massive walnut table, ringed by leather seats and oil paintings of dead CEOs. My grandmother's portrait hung over the mantel, eyes piercing. Daniel Reeves sat in the corner, clutching his briefcase. He gave me a tiny nod. The members shuffled in, whispering. Curious glances mixed with awkward avoidance. They pointed me to a seat at the very end. The segregation felt deliberate. Chairman Robert Langford banged the gavel. Emergency meeting called by directors Langley, Chen, and Alvarez, he announced. Margaret, go ahead. She stood up. This regards company ownership documents. She turned to me. I yield the floor to Miss Grant. Head snapped toward me. Dad leaned back, feigning boredom. I rose slowly, willing my hands to stop shaking. Thank you. What I have to show you is unexpected. Please review the proof before deciding. Dad threw up a hand before I could finish. Mr. Chairman, he smoothed over. Context matters. Robert paused, then agreed. Amelia is my daughter, Dad said with fake warmth. She's a secretary with zero financial background. Victoria chimed in softly. And her dyslexia makes complex reading hard. The board shifted awkwardly. It was a perfect strike, polite, logical, and utterly humiliating. Old habits screamed at me. Run. Hide. Apologize. Then, I caught my grandmother's painted eye. A calm washed over me. I opened my file. My reading skills aren't on the agenda, I stated flatly. This is... I held up the paper. The room went dead silent. The sheet felt lead-heavy. No one breathed. The quiet was deafening, save for the low hum of traffic 40 floors down. This, I said, sliding it onto the mahogany, is Eleanor Grant's final will. Dad lunged forward. Preposterous, he barked. Mother's estate is closed. You have the old one, I countered. This was signed later. I pushed it to Langford. The chairman squinted, checking the seal. Victoria's mask cracked. There's a mistake, she stammered. Wills don't just appear. They do, Daniel Reeves said, standing up. When kept in trust. Everyone stared. I was Eleanor's private counsel, he announced. I drafted this in September 2019. It is 100% legitimate. Whispers erupted. Dad's face turned to stone. She was old, he argued, easily manipulated. I reopened the folder. Before we debate intent, I said softly, I'd like to read a section. Robert nodded. Go. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. To my granddaughter Amelia Rose Grant, I leave 51% of my shares in Grant. Holdings plus full voting rights. The words hit the room like a bomb, a sharp gasp. Victoria shook her head. Impossible, Charles. No. Daniel's voice cut through clinical and cold. Legally, the newest will voids all previous ones. Robert looked up, stunned. 51% is a controlling stake. Dead silence. For the first time, my father actually saw me. Not the prop, not the disappointment me. This means nothing, he hissed. Real or not, Amelia is clueless. She can't run a corporation. I didn't say I wanted to be CEO, I replied. Then what's the point? Victoria snapped. I pulled out a second sheet. Transcripts from Grant's private archives. I'm asking for the truth. I hit play on my phone. Dad's voice boomed out. She's losing it. We need to strip her voting power. The tape clicked off. The following silence was suffocating. Robert slowly turned to my father. "Charles, is that real? Private conversation?" he snarled, totally out of context. "It proves," I said, "that grandmother knew you were plotting. A coup." "This will," was her response. Margaret nodded solemnly. "I recall that day," she murmured. "She was devastated." Victoria jumped up. "Valid or not, she's unqualified. Ownership isn't management. Those insults used to crush me. Now, they were just noise." "I'm not stealing anything," I said. "I'm telling you who actually owns the place." Robert glanced around. "We need legal to vet this," he decided. "Already done," Daniel said. "Sent over at dawn." Dad stood up, slamming his hands. "On the table?" "Meeting adjourned?" "No," Robert corrected firmly. "Recess." The board stood, breaking into frantic whispers. Lawyers flooded the corridor, phones glued to their ears. I sat still. Across the room, Victoria was hissing at Dad, her cool facade gone. He was chopping the air with his hands, furious. For the first time, he looked scared. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. "She trained you for this moment," she whispered. I nodded, throat tight. Outside the city sprawled out, the same city that made me feel small days ago. Now 12 Titans waited to see if I owned them. 40 minutes later, counsel whispered to Robert. The chairman sat up straight. "Seats, please." The room quieted. "Legal confirms the document is binding," Robert stated. He paused. "Effective immediately. Amelia Grant holds the majority interest in Grant Holdings." The power dynamic flipped instantly. The title majority shareholder hung heavy in the air. Nobody moved. Real power isn't met with clapping. It's met with fear. The kind of silence that happens when the predator changes. Dad gripped his chair, knuckles white. "We will appeal," he said, voice strained. Daniel didn't blink. "You can try, Charles, but the paperwork is bulletproof. You'll lose." Victoria looked panic-stricken. "This is insane," she spat. "She's an amateur. She'll destroy the stock value." Same old insults. For years, they defined me. Now they were meaningless. Robert cleared his throat. "Miss Grant, as owner, you may propose motions." All eyes locked on me. My heart didn't race. It slowed down. This was the scene they feared. The dramatic firing, the vengeance. With one word, I could end my father's career. Briefly, I pictured it. The smug certainty vanished from his face, mirroring how my own confidence had faded years ago, but seeing him scared felt hollow. I thought of the note my grandmother left me. This wasn't about getting even. It was about balance. I stood up. "I have a motion to present," I announced. My father let out a dry, mocking laugh. "I'm sure you do," he sneered. I pretended he wasn't there and looked directly at the board members. "I'm not asking to fire Charles Grant as CEO." A wave of confusion washed over the room. Victoria blinked, completely caught off guard. "I am calling," I said, clearly for an official vote of confidence. Robert leaned in, interested. "Elaborate." "The board needs to decide if they still trust the current leadership," I explained. "If the majority votes yes, business continues as usual. If the vote fails, we trigger the transition protocols and the bylaws." Victoria jumped out of her chair. "This is a joke. You're turning a board meeting into a circus." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm just enforcing the rules Grandma wrote." Margaret Langley didn't hesitate. "Seconded." Her voice landed heavy in the room. Robert nodded. "All right, let's vote." My father stared daggers at me. "You're making a massive mistake," he whispered. Maybe, I thought. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care about making him proud. "Everyone who has confidence in Charles Grant remaining as CEO," Robert instructed, "raise your hand." Only 4 hands went up slowly. The cronies who owed him their careers. Robert did the head count. And those with no confidence. 1 hand went up, then Margaret's, then the rest followed. 7 total. The math was clear before he even finished. Robert let out a breath. "The motion passes." 7 against 4 in favor, 1 sitting it out. The silence in the room was deafening. According to the rules, Robert said Mr. Grant has 30 days to submit his resignation. My father didn't fight it. He didn't scream. He just stared at me, like he was looking at a stranger. For years, I thought he'd be furious when this day came. Instead, it was pure shock. He realized he had totally underestimated me, and that arrogance just cost him his empire. He grabbed his files and walked out without saying a word. Victoria looked lost for a second, then chased after him. The door clicked shut. No soap opera screaming, just a quiet end to an era. Margaret squeezed my hand. She'd be proud of you, she told me. I didn't know what to say. Winning didn't feel like a celebration. It felt lonely because power didn't give me anything new. It just destroyed the last fantasy I had, that my family might one day actually be happy. Robert broke the silence. Miss Grant, we need to talk about interim leadership and your new position. I nodded, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Outside New York City was buzzing along like always. Taxis weaving through traffic. Regular people living lives that didn't involve boardroom coups. I'd spent 28 years trying to prove I was good enough. The war was finally over. And honestly, mostly what I felt was relief. The elevator ride down was silent. No cheering, no arguments, no pressure. Just the quiet hum of the machine as the floor numbers ticked down. One by one, I looked at my reflection in the metal doors. Same gray jacket, same exhausted face. But something deep inside had changed. I used to walk into this building trying to be invisible. Now I was walking out as the majority owner. Whatever this feeling was, it wasn't triumph. It was freedom. Stepping onto the sidewalk, Manhattan was chaotic as ever. Cabs flying by, crowds rushing. Nobody. Pausing conversations, blending into the noise of a city that doesn't care about your personal drama. The world hadn't changed, but my spot in it had. Daniel Reeves was waiting by the curb. Well, he said with a soft smile, your grandmother knew you'd pick the fair path. I don't feel very brave, I confessed. He shrugged. Big decisions usually feel terrifying while you're making them. We chatted about what came next. Legal paperwork, temporary CEO's meetings where I'd be the boss instead of the assistant. It still sounded weird to say out loud. When I finally got back to my apartment, the exhaustion hit me like a truck. I sat on the sofa in the dark, listening to the traffic. I always wondered what getting respect would feel like. I never guessed it would come with so much grief. Winning meant accepting a painful truth. My parents never misunderstood me. They just chose to ignore me. The press release went out the next afternoon. Charles Grant resigning effective June 15th. Robert Langford named interim CEO. Amelia Grant appointed as strategic advisor. I read the email once, then shut my laptop. My phone started blowing up instantly. Coworkers who used to walk right past me were suddenly begging for meetings. Investors wanted FaceTime. People who barely knew I existed were speaking to me with sudden respect. I ignored most of them. Then a text from Maria Alvarez popped up. Your grandma said you saw patterns everyone else missed. She'd be smiling today. I took a screenshot of that one. Quiet support always means more than loud applause. The family talks happened later. Mom called first. Her voice sounded tiny, weaker than I'd ever heard it. Amelia, can we meet? We met at a coffee shop near the park. She looked aged. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something brittle. I'm sorry, she said. No defenses, no spin, just an apology. I didn't forgive her right then. Healing isn't a switch you flip. But for the first time, we were being real. We weren't playing roles in a fake, perfect family anymore. We were just two broken people trying to figure out the mess. Victoria reached out a few months later. She told me during a walk that therapy forced her to look at the pressure she'd been under. I thought being the perfect one kept me safe, she admitted quietly. I didn't realize it meant I was leaving you behind. We didn't fix everything overnight. We started slow. Honest talks, no competing. By the fall, I got a place by the Hudson River not far from where Grandma ran the company in the early days. My new job focused on affordable housing projects. Sustainable, long-term impact instead of flashy skyscrapers. It felt closer to what she actually wanted than anything Grant Holdings had done in decades. One night, the sunset hit her painting on my wall, and it clicked. I finally got what she really left me. It wasn't the stock or the money. It was permission. Permission to stop basing my value on what other people thought. My dyslexia wasn't a defect. It taught me grit, how to spot patterns, and how to see systems that other people missed. Looking back, the real victory wasn't the vote. It was the second I stopped waiting for love from people who were never going to give it. If I learned anything, it's this: being the invisible kid feels like a dead end until you realize it's just the prologue to your own story. And sometimes someone hears a story like this and sees a bit of their own struggle in it. When that happens, the story doesn't end. It lives on in the choices you make next. Because the best inheritance isn't power, it's freedom.